Hi, you guys. How are you? So, we are going to do a live react and chat for the Nathan Wade exclusive interview with Linsey Davis from ABC News. Now, I do have it ready to go, but there seems to be two segments taking place before this interview will start. I have it playing at a low volume for myself to hear. But before we get into it, before it starts, so we don't have to watch the other news that's not about Nathan Wade, we do also have a story that we can take a preview at. And again, I've got the volume on in the background, so I'll be able to hear it, and we'll cut right over to it as soon as it comes in. But if you haven't been paying attention to Fani Willis news lately, there was actually another Senate hearing committee that took place on Friday that just passed, and they were doing some probing into the way that funds are being used. A lot of that was questions about, hey, when you hire somebody and you're paying them X amount of dollars for their contract or a salary position, what's the oversight like that like? Give us some idea. So if you want to go back and watch that, it was quite some hours. It's probably like an all-day hearing, but some interesting stuff did come out of it. However, we do have a response from Fani Willis, who was not present at the hearing, stating that she probably won't testify if she's called. So let's take a look at that.
He does not think a Senate State Committee has the legal authority to subpoena her to testify about misconduct allegations surrounding her prosecution of former President Donald.
Oh, and I should have buffered it. Look at me struggle streaming.
Donald Trump. Channel 2's Richard Elliott, live in downtown Atlanta. Richard, you have that, and also news about an endorsement for Willis's campaign.
Yeah, Fani Willis stood there on the steps of Big Bethel AME Church, accepted the endorsement of a coalition of black clergy. Afterwards, we asked her about that state Senate.
I think it's doing this because I have the Hulu in the background.
She said she does not think any subpoena from
so I could pause that
committee is necessarily lawful.
I will not appear to anything that is unlawful, and I have not broken the law.
I can summarize it though. I caught this this speech that was at Big Bethel. That was this morning. She did say what we saw on the screen, that she didn't do anything unlawful. There was a small interview that we can just read while we're waiting for the interview to start with Nathan Wade. And I do want to say hi to everyone. So hi again to Murph's Turf. I saw you pop in earlier, and I'm glad you came back when we went live for Showtime. It's always good to see you in this chat because I usually see you when I'm in the chat somewhere else. So it feels extra special when you're here in the cat chat. And then hey Carol, good to see you. And Denise, good to see you. This is going to be good. I'm excited. You guys both left great comments on the preview of the interview. Very insightful stuff. So very excited to have you guys here for the full watch. And then let's see. I guess that wasn't an article. It was just a video that they wanted us to watch. So, I don't know. But lo and behold, she did mention that Senate committee hearing. That line that we saw the preview of while it was lagging in that 1-minute clip we were just looking at, she's basically saying, I didn't do anything unlawful, that hearing's not lawful, and I'm not going to show up if they want me to show up. And we know that she was supposed to show up at a debate that just passed a week ago, and it was an empty podium for her. She didn't show up for that either. But she's showing up on the steps to Big Bethel Church. And I think that's a good point of conversation. What do you think is the strategy behind you're showing up, you're willing to speak on a platform in a certain place, but you're not doing it for other places? Even though we know you're planning to run for re-election, you chose not to show up for the debate and just let it be an empty podium. Now with the Senate hearing committee investigation going on, you're saying in front of Big Bethel Church, and she didn't focus on it explicitly for that long. It was just like a couple sentences there. But she doesn't plan to appear before the Senate hearing committee. She says there's nothing that she can tell them, there's nothing that they need to know. But it was a pretty long hearing, and it was all focused on how certain monies were spent, how, you know, if we allocate funds to something, what's the oversight for it, especially when it comes to appointed positions. There was some discussion about her security details. Something new that I learned, you know, we watched the hearing, the disqualification hearings. We heard a lot about how, as a DA in her position, and this applies to anybody, as a DA, you are in a precarious position. There's people that could have grievances with you, could want to be seeking a vengeance against you because they feel like you're the person ruining their lives by choosing to prosecute their case, right? And as much as, you know, this channel, you guys in the chat, I think we all have, you know, our common come from, even where we disagree. I think everybody that joins my chat here likes the idea of a prosecutor going after the bad guy and not trying to make a showboat or big to-do about someone that's innocent, right? We don't want prosecutorial misconduct. We don't want to see someone be overcharged. We don't want to see someone sitting without an indictment for way too long, sitting in a jail, racking up dust in some gross, dangerous conditions. And we know that prosecutors should have some freedom and security to do their job well. So when we heard that Fani Willis had some security issues, I don't think that in and of itself shocked anybody. But we did find out at the Senate hearing committee that they're still paying for, you know, her to live somewhere else, even though she had liens on her property, which the question there would be, if you're not paying for the place you have to stay as an alternative, why aren't you paying what you owe the county and perhaps state as far as taxes, right? So there's a lot of interesting things that are coming out of that Senate committee hearing that are explicitly about Fani Willis. But here today, Big Bethel Church, she says, you know, nothing to do with me. And then I saw, so Tamarra, I actually was thinking about you before I started the stream. If you would like to come up and do maybe even at the end, we are waiting for Linsey Davis. They have 3 segments. They're talking about the Columbia protest right now. They have a second one about the ceasefire in Hamas. And then the third is going to be the Nathan Wade interview. So I'm assuming about 7:30 Eastern is when we'll get to the meat and bones. But I thought about you before this live stream started. And I was thinking I would love to have Tamarra come up because we probably started with different opinions about where the disqualification hearing could go. But you had very insightful thoughts, and this is all about Nathan Wade now, right? We have Fani Willis is still working the special prosecution case, pursuing that Trump Rico case, but Nathan Wade is pulled down. And it looks like he's trying to do some rehab for his image. And that's a lot to unpack. So, let me drop a link, and you don't have to come up right away. And this link is for Tamarra in the chat, you guys. If you guys have come up on my stream before and also would like to come chat, join the room. But if you hop in here and I don't know you, don't be offended if I don't pull you up. And then, hey, Erica. And then we're still talking about protests over here on the other side. Although it might be wise for me to to have it like pulled up a little bit. That way, if I miss it, you guys could be in the chat like, hello, Kat.
Absolutely, Linsey. So the university says they will instead.
And then the other thing too is, you know, Linsey Davis. I think Linsey asks a lot of, and we got some previews of this with the morning previews of this interview. Linsey Davis, I think, does a really good job at asking questions about public perception, how people are reacting to things. She's very much a journalist that's conscious of, you know, internet information. The way a story can travel through the internet, the way people could crowdsource information on the internet. And I'll be really interested to see if she dives further into, beyond what we saw in the preview, these questions of, well, do you think that, to Nathan, do you think that this impacted the trial at all? What do you think the public thinks? Oh, nothing, it's no big deal. But I'm worried about my kids, right? That was Nathan's whole stance. And Linsey is very, very in tune, I think, with not just how news gets presented on cable TV, but how it's reached on the internet is a bigger telephone game than cable news TV might be. So, and then Erica says, I prefer her interview style altogether. It's easy to listen to. That's another thing. All right, we're going to get Tamarra up here. And while she's hopping in, give me a thumbs up if you're ready to go. And then I'm going to pull up Now, Tamarra, when you come up, you have 2 channels. I know the link to one. Hey, Tamarra.
Hi,
Cancel
how
the
are
screen.
you?
Struggle
It's good to
streaming.
see you, my friend. How
Good.
are you?
Now, you have 2 channels. Can you quickly explain? You're obviously a content creator. Can you explain the difference between your 2 channels while I find the links and drop them in the chat?
The further channel is for financial literacy and helping families gather funding so they can leave a legacy for generations to come. We help individuals get about $500,000 as a family business so they can start establishing their trust. My guilty pleasure is Pussycat Talk podcast. And of
That's
course,
so good.
yes, it's my alter ego, right? And I've been following you for a minute, and you inspired me, so I need to make sure I say that to everyone. Kat is such an inspiration. I was following you with the Jonathan, majors, and that right there, you gave such amazing insight. I was totally addicted to you, and of course, when you were on the other guys' channel. So thank you so much for doing such a great job.
No problem. I
Yes.
really enjoyed it, and I'm so glad that other people joined along the way, because sometimes you just feel crazy when you don't know that other people are curious too, and you feel like, am I the only one that's scratching my head at this?
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute,
And
this makes sense. And that's kind of sort of what's transpiring over here. It's a lot of noise that's going on with the Fani. I can't stand for someone to say her name incorrectly. It's not Fani, it's Fani Willis. And it's a lot of noise. And I'm not saying that what she did with Nathan Wade was not incorrect, meaning I think what people forget sometimes is we're human. And so when you sit behind these computers, okay, you have a lot of judgment. You play all these types of games as if you are perfect. Okay. No one is perfect. We saw that with Jonathan Majors. We knew that she was a stalker. We knew that evidently he put the D on her and she just couldn't get,
couldn't let it go.
She couldn't let it go.
Man, look, and she had the cardio to keep it going for 5 blocks. That
Oh,
could not have been me at this point in my life.
That was a long time of running, okay? And over here with Fani Willis, we have someone that is very strong in what she does. She's very knowledgeable and she's very educated, as well as she knows the law. And whether you are a supporter of Trump or you are not a supporter of Trump, this right here, I felt that she needed grace. People work together all the time. They forget that, again, because we're behind computers, that you have relationships. You work so close with someone and you get to know them, and then you start talking about what's going on in your lives, and then you fall for each other. And so I honestly think that was the case. It was 2 counterparts that were, he was going through what he's going through, whether you believe his wife cheated on him with his best friend or not. Those were things that were going on, that she cheated on him.
I think Fani very well could have genuinely believed that. You know what I mean? Whether it's actually true or not, you don't know.
Correct.
If that was told to her and she just believed it, because why wouldn't I believe what you're telling me? I trust you in this moment in time. So
And
she really could have believed that.
Right. And Erica Dixon just made a very valid point. Your circle gets small. So some of those individuals, it's like, who do you trust? You're working so close together. You're working on a case, and we know Nathan is a player. It's evident. He was messing with an assistant district attorney in Cobb County. So, so it was a lot going on. But what was shown was this relationship. Now, let me bring up another point. As everyone always keeps saying, Nathan is inexperienced. Nathan is an attorney. Okay. And he was also pivotal to the investigation of information that they found on Trump. Let's put the relationship to the side for a second. All right. The information that they gathered in reference to Trump, whether you are a Trump supporter or not, was getting too hot for the Trump party. That's what it was. They're like, wait a minute, they're finding
things. Do you have some insight on what may have been his direct work product versus the other 2 special prosecutors that were kind of there, the 2 that were employed by the DA?
I was going to actually go back and pull some more additional information, because at the end of the day, he's had years of being an attorney. Just because you haven't done a RICO doesn't mean that you're not experienced as an attorney to go after someone. And I think that's the misconception everyone keeps saying is like, well, he's never tried a RICO case before. What does it matter? He's an attorney. An attorney has to do investigation. And he was pivotal for some of the information that he was able to find during that time that helped them bring this case to court. So that's why I'm like, what is with, and again, it's a play on
I
emotion.
would have to see receipts on that, because all I can think about is that Cobb County, the jail, the Cobb County jail investigation, where,
Right.
you know, he was getting paid, and that's where you got to wonder if there was that relationship coming into play that he had with the, is it
The assistant district attorney. Yeah, the assistant. Yeah,
Yeah,
this,
so
I was
it's
like,
kind of
what
one of those
is going
things.
on here?
It's a pattern. It's not like in the preview of the interview we heard him say, like, you can't help it sometimes, it's inevitable, you're bumping shoulders all day, that whole idea. But if you're doing this every time you go to work in one county from another, then this is a pattern. And then you might be married this whole time. We don't actually know if there was really a true separation or not, because, you know, Joycelyn, her attorney, seems to, and that's obviously her client, but she has a different interpretation of whether they were separated or not. She gave me the impression that, according to Joycelyn, they were not separated during this time. So he's in the Cobb County jail doing this big study on this jail where people are dying. The same thing's happening in a Fulton County jail.
Correct.
There's another like snowball of problems that seem to be popping up. But then he has this interview back in 2020 where the interviewer is like, and what documents do you have to show? And he's like, that's where he says it's in my brain. I
It's
don't
in
have
his
documents,
brain.
but it's in my brain. And that's where I have these questions where maybe he did pull some really big receipts leading up to this RICO to get everything together for a grand jury and secure that indictment. But I would really have to see it. What did he actually do? Because I can't look at his billable hours and look at that invoice and see what he says he did. And if I look at what I know about a limited scope of what he did in Cobb, he says on his own, I don't have the work product of my investigation. So that's questionable.
That's unfortunate. That's what's so unfortunate. And maybe because I'm a little bit on the old school side, you know, again, because technology is so different and it allows us to do a lot of documentation, it's disappointing that he didn't have paper documentation to show per se. But does that mean he didn't have the information? So it's almost as if I'm not talking about writing for Nathan. I'm talking about Fani. So let's make sure that I want to make that absolutely
I think
clear.
the hiring process, you know, if you hear someone
Right.
investigated XYZ, you just look at their resume, you know, what comes across as a resume or word of mouth. Maybe
Correct.
he came with a good recommendation from the other TA.
Well, think about that for a moment. I want you to think about that. Even even when they were doing the hearing, remember, what did they call her? I couldn't stand that. I can't even remember her name because they talked about her being Pantene so much. What was the attorney's name? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, call her by her name. Don't call her Merchant. Think about it for a second. Evidently, he had to be a pretty decent attorney if Merchant had his t-shirt on and was jockeying for him to get that position. Think about that for a second. He was a judge. So therefore, people felt that he was experienced. Even the governor, the former governor of the state of Georgia, Roy Barnes. So he had some type of experience, some type of track record, whether it was in his brain or whether it was on his paper. How can other colleagues say
he was smooth talker? He's that.
I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that he's a good-looking man. He's sharp in his appearance. But think about it's not just that though. You can only ride on that for so long. You've got to know something in order to be an attorney for that period of time, and for that, and to be able to be a judge at some point, in order to be coaching at conferences. So, I mean, that's where they met, right? They met at the conference.
It was like a CLE, like a continuing law education thing.
Exactly. So you heard what you said? Continuing law, which means he had to have studied something of law. And that's why I'm saying there is more to it than just the fact of it was just in my head. You can't just float.
Well, I do have some general pushback, and it's not it's not anything that I have, explicit examples of right here, but there is this idea that, people get these speaking fees and they go up there and they're good at speaking. They get they're coaching gurus in a certain niche, and they sell these programs, they sell these educational programs, but they end up being kind of more like charlatans when you look at what they actually put into practice. What is their boots on the ground? What is their actual experience? Are they just coaching it because they couldn't do it? Right? So sometimes when you hear, okay, he was speaking at conferences, to me, that's a stronger signal he was trusted, which is in line with what we're talking about here. How did Fani come across? How did he come across this pathway to be hired and appointed? Is it just because of a personal relationship? Is it at all because of a personal relationship? We have the interview. Should we cut to it? That's a commercial break, so.
Okay. But the thing is, he's been coaching more than one time. He's referred, these are people that are referring him that are judges to be teaching that at that conference. So again, you have to know something. You can't just because everyone feels you're a smooth talker or you have a decent look of appearance or you speak eloquently, he had to still have the education and the experience and the know-how in order to train other attorneys. There's no way that he could do that without that.
Specifically what his, when you go to you see the itinerary of, you go to a conference and it's 9 to 5 and then at hour block 1, the speaker's going to talk about this subject. I wonder if we could pull it up and see.
Yeah, I was trying to do
topic. Because maybe it was something real specific.
Yeah, because, so I sit up here and I'm like, okay, yes, he's having to do damage control. He don't have any money. And
why do we think he's going on this podcast? This interview.
Right. So think about that for a second. His career is being messed up because of it. He hasn't done felony cases. The law is different. Attorneys are not all size fit all. But yeah, the law is the law. If you read the law is the law. So it's the interpretation of the law. And if he can find cases that match up with a particular so-called felony, again, the law is the law. Hey, this is what the law states. He's an attorney for one, so nobody can dispute that. This is what the law states. And based on this law, this person violated the law, so we can get them on this. So if that's his interpretation and that's how they were able to bring the case on, you can't dispute that. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether he has done felony cases or not. It's a matter of how he's able to bring across the law and interpret the law before the judges. And if the judges or the Supreme Court is saying, based on the law that you found, based on what's going on here, that person violated the law, so therefore we're taking it to trial. And that's what transpired. So you could say whether he tried felony cases or not. At the end of the day, was he able to bring the law that literally made it that, and he assisted in that, he investigated. His responsibility was special prosecutor, investigator. He was responsible for investigating the information to bring on to Trump. That was the other reason why, outside of them bumping and grinding, that's why he was special prosecutor, because he was looking for that information.
Extra special prosecutor.
Okay, outside of him being special, right? But at the end of the day, if he found the information, what does it matter? A lot of people start at the bottom.
And that's the other question. I was going to say, if we get here and we say, look, no matter whether someone's qualified for the job or not, was there, was the policy of giving this appointment, was that gravy? Was that followed, right? Because that's different, right? Following the steps to do a good hire is different than everything that you base your hire on. If it looks true on its face, and I think we have our exclusive. Let's cut over to that and we'll come back to this.
Great, fantastic.
After being forced to step down from historic prosecution of former President Trump because of his romantic relationship with DA Fani Willis. In our wide-ranging interview, Wade talks about what he does and does not regret and where the case goes from here. What do you want people to know?
I want people to know the real me.
So there are those who say you weren't qualified for this case. How do you respond?
I respond by saying, let's give it some color. I defended murders, rapes, armed robbers, molesters, mostly criminal cases that dealt with high stakes, including life. The picture that was being painted, that there was no experience, is just not an accurate one.
You and Fani meet in 2019?
Yes, ma'am.
What was the extent of your relationship prior to November 1st of 2021?
We met at a judges conference. We stayed professional friends for quite a bit of time thereafter. Started to pick up a little bit when COVID started. We began to spend inordinate amounts of time communicating. During the course of the investigation, nights, weekends, evenings, mornings, I can't tell you how much time that we spent together. We got closer and closer and closer. Workplace romances are as American as apple pie. It happens to everyone, but it happened to the two of us.
Do you regret it?
I regret that private matter became the focal point of this very important prosecution. I hate that my personal life has begun to overshadow the true issues in the case.
But at some point, once that bond is there, and if democracy is on the line, as has been described, do you say, maybe we pause this until after the case is over?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll concede that could have been an approach, but when you are in the middle of it, these feelings are developing, and you get to a point to where the feelings are so strong that you start to want to do things that really are none of the public's concern. It wasn't lost upon the two of us that things could bleed over into the case and start to affect it, and so we made the adult-like decision to do what we did.
Do what we did. What do you mean by that?
In terms of protecting the integrity of the case, keeping the rest of the office out of our personal and private lives, and at the point that we decided to discontinue the relationship, we did.
But it's my understanding.
Now, I have like a minute of threshold that we can pause and react. So first, they got right into the questions we were talking about.
Exactly.
Second, what's the timing of this relationship ending? Because this confused me during the preview. He said, once we realized it, we ended it.
My understanding, they ended it a year ago. Okay. And if you remember,
but didn't she say it was like, we had that long, serious talk we had as a woman, right? She said it that way.
I was literally about to say that. He was basically saying, look, this might be, and I'm just paraphrasing, okay? Look, this might be getting a little crazy. We probably need to pull back. And she's like, no, we're good. Fani, she's a strong woman. No, we're good. We can still rock together. And then they parted ways. And so somebody made a comment in the chat about him. He's feeling regret of not taking care of his wife and his kids. I'm sorry. Those kids were grown. Okay. They're grown. It's time for them to start
18 by, I don't know, like when they turned 18. I just know that now today they're over 18, but was that true? Like 2020?
Yeah, they're in that, right. They were like 20 years old. But I'm speaking right now in reference to about the medical situation. She needed money for medical. First of all, you call them on the same day saying, I need you to send me some money because I'm going to the doctor. You're supposed to reach out to him 24 to 48 hours ahead of time, for that. And the money that he's giving you, you decided to give it to your children. Now, I'm a mother. I have 2 sons, adult sons. And so it's like, I'm not going to be taking care of you. You're grown enough to take care of yourself. At some point, his son is away playing soccer, and he wanted him to send him some money, and he said, no, you're going to have to start fending.
You want to be the good mom, so you give me money that I'm saying is for one thing. I give that money to the kids, so I'm not taking money out of my own pocket to give it to the kids. I look like hero mom.
Right.
And then I'm asking you for more money for the thing that I didn't use the money for. That's why I think part of this interview is to clean up that, because we heard Joycelyn, and I think Joycelyn's attorney was very compelling and authentic, right? So I'm not disputing or trying to discredit her. I'm just saying this is probably we're about to get a counterbalance to that. Do you want to keep going?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
I think that's probably where we're going to go, is personal life.
The relationship ended not because you were worried about it bleeding over, but you all just had differences of the value of a male and female in a relationship, that kind of thing, that you ultimately started having some heated conversations. But correct me if I'm wrong, was there a point that you all stopped because you said, this is inappropriate, this could impact the integrity of the case?
Okay, that's a lot there. So we didn't have heated conversations to the extent that we were at odds and arguing about the inherent roles of.
Well, you know, I mean, Fani said
men
on the witness stand, like, oh, according to Mr. Wade, the only thing a woman can do is make me a sandwich, right? I mean, and she said, she's the one who described it as heated conversation.
She said that, you know, listen, if I made a statement like that, certainly it was in jest.
This is very lawyerly.
I respect women.
So just give me a sense of the timeline as far as when the romance actually started and then once it stopped.
So early 2022 to late 2023 is the time frame. What people don't see and don't know is that we continue to have a very close relationship. We are friends.
A Washington Post columnist wrote, what were they thinking? How could two seasoned attorneys embroiled in the prosecution of a former president start a romance and not see this trouble coming a mile away? And so what were you thinking in that moment?
You don't plan to develop feelings. You don't plan to fall in love. You don't plan to have some relationship in the workplace. You don't set out to do that. And those things develop organically. They develop over time. And the minute we had that sobering moment, we discontinued it.
Jay?
I just want to know what that sobering moment was. When was that moment?
Okay, you know I got to say something about this cat, all right? This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm talking about. It's like people forget. They forget they're human, right? And you forget that here it is, you go to lunch with somebody that you work with, your counterpart, right? And all of a sudden you're like, that person ends up becoming your best friend, you know, because you guys are always together. And then you start hanging out, you're talking, this, that, and the other. And just like you said, you develop a close relationship. And then at that moment in time, then it turns into something physical. So for everyone to judge, and that's why I said, I actually believe some of this in reference to what Fani is saying as well. It's like you're sitting up here thinking, you guys are, you know, what is it? Those without sin cast the first stone. You cannot tell me that you have never seen somebody have a relationship or been in a relationship that they're saying is inappropriate. Now, let's go to the fact of him being married, okay? If he felt that they were separated, then they were separated. If his wife was away,
he filed for divorce.
He filed for it when they were doing whatever it was with the case, okay? But that doesn't necessarily mean that they weren't.
It like November 2nd?
Yeah.
Was that?
But does it really?
He takes the position November 1st and he files November 2nd.
Correct. So does it really matter when he filed for divorce? Right. It was about that money. Think about it for a second. The point is he filed. At the end of the day, he filed. But does it really matter when a person filed? Because we don't know what's going on in their household. She was away with her mom. So why were, you know, and his mom, and my understanding, her mom was ill, but she was away. So if she was away and then he has cancer and then Fani's feeling oh, I'm sorry you're going through this because his ding ding couldn't get up, evidently, you know, something was going on. Okay. But he was wondering if it's reality. That's what I'm saying, Barb. That's what I'm saying. So here it is, you know, she's feeling sympathy for him. He's confided in her. We don't know if he brought her in as the ropey dope and telling her all this stuff because we know men could do that.
Well, and then, like, this is really where Murph's going. So he's lying on legal documents, right? And we know that Fani came out and she wanted to say, no, put a pause on, you're trying to subpoena me for this divorce hearing? No, 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 no. Which is another situation where I can say, and it's totally my opinion, I think that that's an overstep of her power. She probably charged up in there all heated and did that. And I don't think that that's really the right to do when you should know the law and you should know you're using that strong arm move. But at the same time, I do think that she was probably going in there believing that Nathan Wade had been separated from her. It was a mutual agreement. She was cheating. So maybe she shouldn't have strong-armed that way. But then it comes back to Nathan. And if Nathan is going in and saying, you know, this is how much money I'm making, and he's downplaying it. And then the divorce attorney, Joycelyn's divorce attorney, is like, no, we want to see it. This isn't adding up. Whether you think that, you know, what she does with the money after she agrees to it, you accepted a temporary settlement, you're not paying up, we're stipulating things back and forth in court, there's big drama, big flare. Nathan's a lawyer. He can't just have an excuse to say, well, I underrepresented how much money I make because I didn't know better. He doesn't have an excuse for that. He really, like, I can't see him wrap out of that.
Outside of being negligent, so let's also back it up. And again, I'm playing devil's advocate right on this part right here. How many of us pay our taxes on time? And that was also brought up that Fani didn't pay her taxes on time, which is crazy. So how many of us don't pay our taxes on time, or how many of us don't pay our bills on time, or how many of us don't write down things? And knowing that we should be writing it down. I still say some people forget that we are
I don't
human.
get $550 an hour to not write down the recipe I'm making, though. So
yeah, I honestly feel that he wasn't telling full truths in reference to what he was making, because he didn't want to pay. Now, I agree with that. So he was, Erica says she owes. I honestly, you know, and this is where it comes down to men when they're going through a divorce. They're like, I ain't finna give up all my money. And I don't have to necessarily say exactly, because remember, he was splitting it for a moment with 2 other partners. So that doesn't necessarily mean you have a full account. Okay, hey, we got paid $25K. We're splitting it up with 3. Oh, there are expenses. So by the time the expenses are taken out, this is roughly about what I'm making. That's valid. That's actually valid, because you're going based off of your profit and loss. Okay. And that's another thing. Again, they don't say everything. So they blow up something that could be, well, wait a minute now. The law firm does have expenses. So by the time those expenses are deducted, this is what's actually being made. And that could be a rough estimate of what he projected.
here's where I'm flipping back to the county with that, though. We take all the Fani Nathan personal relationship stuff aside. It's only human. Take all that aside. If his team is getting paid for their taint teamwork, they're serving as the filter for what the DA is not supposed to be able to see to protect certain things like attorney-client privilege. If it's his own team handling taint teamwork, and then he gets the special prosecutor appointment, is that not an issue? Where is the oversight there? So sometimes the question comes back to the oversight and what do you do? And then we find out, oh, we don't have any responsive documents, which means we're not following the procedures that exist. Or, that's it. There's no answer there because nobody looked into it or questioned it. When to me, that's quite unusual. You have partners from the same firm serving as a taint team in a district attorney's office where someone ends up getting a contract, an appointment as a special prosecutor in a high-profile RICO case.
Because we're not attorneys, I can't honestly answer to that portion of it, because there's a lot of, as I don't know if you saw the hearing that they had yesterday or the day before, or Friday. I think it was yesterday.
Friday, I think it was Friday, right? Because yesterday was Sunday. I don't know.
I'm like, okay, my lines are
day.
But it was quite interesting. It's like, oh, so when he was asking the questions, like, well, who signs off on this? Well, who is the, and
they don't know. They don't know. They never know.
Right. And so it's like, so now what's happening is you're affecting all the district attorneys across the board, because all of them have some leeway when you're doing investigation work, right? It's like, look, we have X amount of dollars to go after this particular case, and this is what we need it for. Barb made a point. She says Trump has broken every norm, law, and basic human decency. And I agree with you on that, and 1000%. And it's like, if anybody is going up against him, they're trying to discredit every single thing that individual is. who they are, the threats, the tearing down. And it's just interesting. I do find it very interesting. It's like, okay, how is it people of color are the ones that are prosecuting him? I find that to be very interesting. And I do feel like, for a fact, here being in Georgia, that if Fulton County didn't take that case, no other county would have taken that case here in Georgia. Fulton County is the only one that would have taken that case, or possibly DeKalb County. And so it's just interesting to see. It's like, it's so much attack. So when they say, oh, when I'm on my Counterpoints channel, you say, oh, so you're race baiting. No, I'm not. I see that there is smoke and mirrors going on here, and you guys are trying to deflect. The other team is trying to deflect. But please remember, this man called somebody up and said, where are these 11,000 votes? What's the implication? The person he was speaking to was a Republican. Okay. So if that Republican felt weird about the conversation, and everybody was attacking him for putting Trump on blast because he got a phone call, evidently he felt something was wrong with that conversation. He put that conversation on blast. So when you have prosecutors that are going after someone based on what you are saying, so and then it's like, wait. So because we're in a Black Mecca here in Atlanta, and then now you're making it seem like every Black person is corrupt. I don't like that idea either. So that's another reason why I'm like, no, I'm going to give grace, because this case is so big. If you have broken the law, blatantly broken the law, okay, yes, you deserve some consequences, but you are trying to deflect this case, bring up smoke and mirrors, and try to dismantle individuals, who are trying to make a living, but you are trying to take over and remove people's rights. It's like the lesser of two evils. What are we going to do here? Nathan was wrong, and he should have stepped down. Fani should be able to keep her job, and if she wants to continue to be the district attorney, she needs to earn it, and she needs to apologize to the people of Fulton County. That's just my take on it.
I think the bigger apology for me is this idea of, playing with justice and people's independence. Is we have these major RICO trials that are big pizzazz. That's the platform, right? We're prosecuting these big RICO trials. They're staying in the news cycle. But
yes,
we're not issuing indictments to these people that are sitting in jail, even though we added new resources for a pre-indictment program. And 91% of the individuals sitting in jail longer than this 45-day period are minority persons. And there's like a certain budget that they do these statistics. That's why it's the ACLU bringing that suit forward on behalf, challenging Fani Willis's office for the people sitting in prison or in jail without indictments after 45 days. Because it's becoming a civil liberties issue, because
yes,
the indigent people can't pay the bail or bond. They're not even getting the bail or bond hearing. That's a problem. But then, even when it's a negligible amount to the average person, the typical person that's being held for some charge that should fall under this diversion program, this pre-indictment diversion program, they can't afford a $500. They live paycheck to paycheck. They can't afford $500 to get out. And they're sitting there.
You brought something up that was really important. Okay. Here it is. We have minorities that are sitting in jail that can't even pay to get out. But then we got billionaires who are trying to keep these individuals in jail because they're making money off of them being in
contracts.
Okay.
And the leases and the beds in the heads in beds.
Exactly. So there is a much bigger picture here. So it's not, so again, they're trying to make it all fall on the DA's office because all these people are in. Well, who is forcing that issue? Who's forcing the heads in the beds? Okay. Because they get paid to have them in jail. They get paid for every single person that's there. Now, you and I both know who is responsible for that. It's not the people of color. They're not making.
It's not attributable to any demographic. It's
right.
To me, it's a structure. We're gonna put more people out on the street to stop crime, right? Which means we get to pull more people over and say they did something wrong, throw them somewhere, don't charge them with anything, so they're sitting there longer. Perfect system.
But who owns the prisons?
I don't actually know the contractor for that. Because the one jail that this study was on was the Fulton County jail.
Yeah,
But
but
it's my understanding that that's not the only
correct. There's a
place where
cab.
this is happening.
Yeah,
I mean, and that's like a national problem. So,
right. It's a national problem. But I asked you again, who owns the jail? They're privately owned. They're privately owned corporations. Okay. And people of color don't own any prisons. So who's getting the contracts? Who's getting the money? And then of course, then it trickles down, right? Then here you
the
have
DA is
someone
supposed to, within 45 days, notify a judge if someone is
absolutely
still sitting without an indictment. And they
1,000.
don't get that. So they're denied the opportunity to have a bond or bail hearing.
That is absolutely correct. Well, who's pushing the agenda to do that? What pressure are they being put on? It's almost like the school system when the teachers are being put under pressure to make sure that those students pass, and they don't even know how to read third or fifth grade, but they're still making sure that they pass to the next level. These people they're like, wait a minute, we're on the borderline. We can extend this, having these individuals in here because the state gets more money. It's a vicious, horrible cycle. It's a vicious, horrible cycle. Then there comes down to the level of integrity. What is the right thing to do, right? That's what it really comes down to. What is the right moral thing to do? But then it's like, okay, I have to make a living. I could lose my job. So we don't know what it is for that person to be in that particular situation. We don't know what's behind the scene. So
but what about asking for just sending a letter, a note notifying the judge? This is who's been, you look at your calendar, you see what was falling under that 45-day limit, and you're not even notifying the judge of the problem. You don't have the responsive documents.
That's definitely on them. They are responsible.
Like,
that's
like really where I feel like I went when I heard that, because it's like,
yes,
that's not even, you could tell the judge, hey, we don't have everything we need yet. We're not prepared. But you still just need to send this notification over, right? It's not like they're saying you have to have your full case ready within 45 days. It's just asking for a notification.
Yeah, and that is where I'm like, okay, how can you justify that portion of it? That's why I said that it comes down to a moral and integrity. It's like, okay, or are you so bogged down that you can't do it? Are you so? It's almost like with the
district. Why did we hire and we created and extended all these resources to bring in new personnel for a pre-indictment diversion program? Where did it go? That's really my grievance, and unfortunately, I don't think this Nathan Wade interview is going to get into it. Although I am hoping that they talk about that Cobb County.
Okay.
Do you want to keep going? We have 2 ad breaks that I think we have time to skip, and then we'll actually be caught up. They put a lot of ads in this, guys. I can see on the bar.
A motion is brought that reveals that there's been this relationship. At that time, the relationship was over, correct? The romantic aspect of the relationship. Yes, what was going through your mind on that day when it suddenly becomes, I know you've said before it wasn't a secret, but now it does become public?
Where is the relevance here? How does this in any way affect the prosecution of those charged in the election interference case?
So for 25 days, we didn't hear from you or District Attorney Willis. Why not come forward? At that point, you're a public servant, right? Getting paid from the state of Georgia. Why not say, okay, we'll make a statement, we'll get on top of this, we'll get ahead of this?
Let me say this. My conversation here with you today is just that. It's Nathan's conversation. I do not speak for the district attorney's office. I do not speak for their position. As a matter of fact, I'm certain that they would rather me not be having this exchange with you.
So you said you didn't want to violate the public's trust. I'm curious, do you think that you've done any kind of damage to this case?
None at all. None at all.
Even the public perception of it?
My private life became the focal point of the case. My private life has nothing to do with the merits of that prosecution.
Donald Trump now is trying to get the judge's decision overruled. We'll find out in a week or so if Fani Willis gets to stay on the case. Do you feel, as we sit here today, that this case is in jeopardy?
Because that issue is before the Court of Appeals currently, my goal is to protect the integrity of the process. I don't want to say anything that's going to
I was going to say, so that's true. Since they are appealing that, we might not get the hard-hitting questions and answers on this topic.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
I want it for my own tea.
Oh, this is, I will say this has been great. Late night soap opera or daytime. This is like daytime soap opera dealing with Fani, because that whole situation was just like, wow. Okay. They're really blowing up this. It went from you guys sleeping together to it was just insane. I mean, it's like, think about it. Kat, would you want somebody coming talking about your personal life if it had nothing to do with the case?
Well, no, but I always feel like I'm in a weird situation because I've just never dated someone I worked with ever. And I understand that people do it, but at the same time, I just don't agree that it's as American as apple pie. So I can understand it. I see it. I can empathize with it, especially where there's no like power differential. It's not like a supervisor sneaking around with like the young person they just hired, nothing like that. But on the other side, I don't agree that, it's so commonplace. It'd be weird to think this was anything but American. I don't walk up and...
To use that term as apple pie was just, he's a Southern guy. Okay. But I think that it was more of, this happens more than, this happens a lot, and and that was the point that I was trying to say. I'm like, they're acting like this stuff don't happen. This stuff happen all the time. People are, on the job and they end up falling in love and they get married. And I know people now who have literally gotten married and they've met on the job,
At work.
Yeah, they met at work. So that was my point of, you guys are not really looking at it as if this doesn't happen. It happens every single day, and
you get that other side of it too, where it's like, the Senate committee, not the one that happened on Friday, but when they had Ashley speaking in front of the Senate, Ashley Merchant speaking in front of the Senate committee. Some of that questioning was, he's not a employee of the district attorney's office. So there's these standard operating procedures and there's protocol. There's statutes that say this is the conflict of interest. You cannot go and hire someone you're working with, no fraternizing. But then he wasn't in that role. He was in a separate bucket. So during that hearing, and I think the guy leading the committee, it was a very good question. He's like, well, what's the standard operating procedure for someone who's not actually a direct employee of the county? And that's where the whole room, I think, was in agreement that there is no standard operating procedure. There is no set of rules that explicitly state that. And then you're in a room full of lawyers. What are they all going to say if something's not explicitly stated?
Right. So it's so crazy, because if he was an employee, yeah, that would be some serious issues. He was a contractor. Okay. That's really what it came down to. He was a contractor. And so I thought it was very interesting, as we were listening to this hearing, with the commissioners, and then it came down to, we have no jurisdiction over this. It was if they were just doing it to appease the Trump people or the public, just to have that hearing. And then the governor for the state writes up a law, and that's because he was being pressured. Now, he could have wrote that law up a long time ago, but he did not. So I find it very interesting that all of these things are coming in play, all because of little old Fani Willis. Okay. All of these new rules, all of this new stuff about district attorneys. And then what you're doing is you're going to end up putting a chain around district attorney. People are not going to want to do that position, because it's like, now you're holding me liable for doing my job. I have to hire people outside, and private investigators and, to go and do research that we can't do here within the office. And that's where all when they took everything out from being an employee and put it all on contractors, to do the work, you got to pay these people. And the one thing that really upset me about Merchant was like when she literally said, well, he's getting paid this much, as if he shouldn't get paid. He's a seasoned attorney. It doesn't matter if he has the so-called experience of filing doing a felony or not. He's a seasoned, a previous judge, and therefore, if that's what he bid it for or asked for, then that's what he should get paid. I didn't like the fact that she said he shouldn't get paid.
It was on to that. I think the Senate, their response questioning, or the questions they were asking to continue the conversation, because it wasn't really like a proper direct or cross-examination in that type of setting. But I do think their questioning was pretty indicative. They weren't so concerned with what you were talking about. They're like, all right, let her talk, whatever. But what were the other things that they asked for? You know, how do these dates line up with where these contractual payments changed? Is this typically how a itemization looks like? They were looking for those areas where is this actually unusual?
Right.
Where is this? Because you can't just say, well, he got paid $750,000 and someone else got paid $250,000, but then you find out one is an actual salary, the other is a contract, a subcontractor payment, and you don't know the differentials of work there. And
but do you find a smoke and mirror? Do you see that could have been a smoke and mirror situation? You said what you just said. We don't know the difference of what they bid it. Remember, Fani said something.
I wouldn't have made a point out of it at the hearing unless I knew the difference in the proportions was significant. I would have focused on look, this is very unusual and it's not standard to have the itemization this way. I've personally sent these to, and I actually did get into this, but it was after long, it was like she answered something for 10 minutes and then finally said, like, my own experience, and the other people all agreed because they're all attorneys. I've had things rejected by this DA's office that was way more detailed than this item list. And they sent it back and said, nope. So that's what I would have led with, personally. I wouldn't have led with, like, a broad number where there's no indication of the proportion, something that could explain the proportional difference. Which on the surface, salary versus contract is very different. Right there is one possible explanation. I just wouldn't have led with it at all. I might not even have talked about it except to say, hey, he made $750,000. This is the itemized receipt. It wouldn't have been to make a comparison saying that there was a causative factor there that looked bad.
But think about
what not have led with it.
Understand what she got on the stand. She said, I'm a negotiator. I'm going to go for the less amount. Now, when it comes to bidding, she said that she's responsible for some of these bids that are coming through. And based on, she said, I always save the county money. And I'm like, if y'all was really doing a RICO, meaning if y'all were really trying to take the state's money, you would have went for a whole heck of a lot more money than that, because she has power and control over that. Yes, they still have to sign off on it, but they could have got a whole bunch of money. And that's why I was like, this isn't about the money. This is about what you guys have found out and can prove in court on the other side. So if we remove these people from this case, then they can't prosecute because no other county is going to take this case, and we're going to get them off this case because they're in a relationship. That's what it's really all about. It's all this other stuff is smoke and mirror. Okay, yes, he got paid more. Okay, they was boning each other in that term. Okay, all right. What it all boils down to is they found something out that they can prove in court, and they want them off the case. So we're going to make them look as bad as possible, and we're going to mess with their life until the case is no longer about what it was really about. It's about them having a relationship. Oh, and she paid him a little bit more than what she would pay another contractor, if that is the case. So the question is, how many other contractors have come through and what have they all been paid? And so when you put that comparison up with all the other contractors previously, and if other people got paid similar or around the amount, then you can have a case. But until you prove those points, you don't have a leg to stand on. And if it's a contractor or if it's an employee, like you said.
And my points would have been totally different. Like I said, I would have gone in there. I would have led with the itemized receipts. I would have wanted to bring up that Cobb County work products all in my head. I would have wanted to bring up things like, well, you don't have these itemized receipts here. How do you know that the person you're appointing and continuing to pay, how do you know that they're actually doing the work that you're using taxpayer money to expend? Right? He's not really a public official. He's not elected. He's not appointed. He's not employed by someone directly that was elected into office either. He's subcontracted, right? You can't strong arm that.
Correct. You're absolutely correct. I'm 1000% agree. And what that guy, MC Fly, said, yeah, I've always been told the same thing. Don't poop where you eat. That's what I was taught. No workplace because it creates drama. But again,
100%.
A point that was made, you can't help. Sometimes you just can't help your feelings. Sometimes you honestly can't help your feelings when you are confiding and you become friends. And then, but this right here, so for everybody to judge, that's why I say I'm always for the underdog or the little person, because for everybody to judge, I say you forget that we're human here and things happen. Just things happen.
I think I would have a different opinion because I disagree that I just think it's not okay that they continued this relationship for so long. They were going on these, it just seemed like fantasy land. They were living fantasy land. And I'm not saying I'm not aware that people do that sort of thing, right? But when you're in this position and you care about this case, but you would do something that you know could come up as a conflict of interest.
I think there was arrogance.
I'm like,
I think it was a level of arrogance that they didn't think they would come up. I'm being honest. I think there was a level of arrogance, like, no one's going to find out. Nobody's going to say anything, so we're good. And then maybe that's when he was like, you know what, maybe we need to pull back on this. This is a really big case and we don't want it to be messed up. That could have been that conversation as to why they're no longer together. It's like, okay, look, we get into the thick of this and we probably need to pull back on this. And he's thinking since thinking all that. And she's like, I'm going, she's a passionate person. No, I want us to continue, yada, 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 and keep going. He's like, the case, again, they could have had that conversation. That could have been the reason why they're no longer together. And, in another word.
That's why I think it's weird. He's emphasized, and maybe it's just because I watched a preview, but in my head, I feel like he's mentioned it twice, that he said, we had this kind of like solid moment where we said, oh, putting a stop to it. We had a sobering conversation. And Linsey pushed back on it. And in my opinion, I'm thinking, I just don't think that they really had a solid moment ahead of time. I don't think this is something that they realized on their own that, hey, maybe this is a little bit too much. This is about to get serious. The hearings are about to really ramp up. We need to stop doing this because this could look bad. I think that sobering moment was when things hit the fan. In January, February of this year.
I honestly don't think so. Somebody made a very valid point. It was COVID. Everyone was lonely. And that's fact. That's actual fact. A lot of people, think about it. People were losing their mind because they had been caged in and we were in a planned scamdemic. Okay. We were in a planned scamdemic, during that time, and people were confined. And here it is, they're working together and they were talking on the phone and then it starts getting personal. Okay. And then they start seeing each other. So that's why I'm like, although, again, those without sin cast the first stone. Okay. If you honestly have never been in that, situation, but somebody that has, how many times, Kat, can you honestly say, oh, my girlfriend is seeing somebody she shouldn't be seeing? We've said this many, many times, right?
I would have been 2 Chainz up on the stand. I would have been like, I don't want to be here today.
Yeah,
I was aware that they were intimate together, and I told them, shouldn't be doing that. That would have been me.
Right, but we either been in it or we know someone. Okay, and there was the word love that came out somewhere in this interview. And when you love someone and they're friends, they're still friends, and that in itself says something. Okay, so it brought them closer. Why? Because the whole world is against them. We're friends. And who knows? They may still be together. Okay. All right.
That's an interesting question. That's why, they broke up during the hearing, but now they're like, we had a sobering moment because people were finding out. Well, according to the hearing, it seemed like you went your separate ways separate from that. That wasn't the reason you went your separate ways, but now you went your separate way because of this sobering moment from this investigation into the disqualification. So I'm like, this interview is tripping him up a little bit.
Yeah.
He's holding his own on certain questions, giving his very lawyerly answers. But on that timeline issue, which is what a lot of people cared about. We know Judge McAfee really cared about the timeline of when something may have started. Was it before this contract was given? And here he is doing this interview like, well, we were just chugging along until we had a sobering moment. Like,
I just want it to be over with. I'm gonna be truthful with you. I wanted to get down to the case and, let's just duke it out. At the end of the day, that's what, there are people who fell in love or had a relationship and they ended it. They're friends for the news stories, but I don't think Fani has much use for him anymore unless he gets a blue pill and maybe cruise without his mom or sister. I thought that was pretty serious. They went on a trip together and his mom was there. Thank you for bringing that point up. That relationship was serious. No man is going to bring
hope so, because
around.
I think a newer generation, especially, sometimes meeting mom is not that serious of a sign anymore. But he is. I'm expecting, typically, guessing what his mom's age might be. That is the generation where you're not just supposed to meet mom as a passerby.
Correct. That had to be
not just coming home for one night to meet mom.
Right. That was a serious relationship for the mother to be on the trip with you. Okay. That, so that in itself. So yeah. Thank you, Murph. I appreciate your comment. But
yeah, Murph is really great. And I wish, so Murph, if you are still here, you were saying you don't want to be that disagreeable person in chat, but that's why we love, and the reason, look, I don't agree across the board with Tamarra, but she's a great person to talk to, and we have the same end goals. One, protect your generational wealth. It's really great to hear that that's what your personal, and I think you sent me the link, because I didn't know it earlier. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put her for her second. We linked to the podcast earlier, but this is the proper way to spell her name for her financial literacy channel. And common goals, this idea of false imprisonment. What happens when you're arrested? You lose your money. It destroys your family's income. You know how long it might take someone that's been held in jail for 400 days without an indictment to come back out and recoup the money that they lost from not being able to work?
That's why everybody needs trust. That's why everybody needs a trust, okay?
Yeah, have a plan. And trusts aren't for just when you die. It covers your, durable power of attorney. What happens if I'm incapacitated? It covers all these things that happen while you're still alive that you might not expect would need to be necessary. Nobody wants to think about that stuff. So when we talk about these things like big flashy prosecution, I might say, hey, it's not like just nothing. And Tamarra might be like, it's an excuse. And I could see why someone would leverage, right? I'm in agreement that someone's going to leverage anything that they can. And I think as an attorney, as long as you're not doing anything misleading or deceptive.
Correct.
But if you are using anything you can get your hands on to try to make a case for your client by any argument that could stick to the wall, that's good advocacy for your client. I'm always going to be on the side. There's very few cases. It takes a really crappy defense attorney for me to want to be more critical of the defense than I want to be of the prosecution in a case, because the defendant has rights that the prosecution does not, right? And I don't think we disagree on all of those things across the board. We should, if something's wrong, come up with a way to fix it. But if there was no rule in place in the first place, how do you hold someone accountable if there's no standard that they should have known about, right?
That's what I was saying. I'm like, there's no rules, so how can you sit up here and say what's wrong? Everyone wants to say, Miss Cat, that oh, you're a fornicator. What was it? Adulterer. Well, okay, they were legally married, but if they were
just because Georgia has like a little bit more of a, they're not like the strictest in the country, but they're not the most liberal in the country about, divorce rules, right?
We're in the Bible. There's such hypocrites here. It is so insane. Okay, we can't have liquor on Sunday, but yet some other stuff go down. So I'm just like, are you serious right now? And it's literally, they weren't even in the same, nepotism is a conflict. Yeah, they weren't even in the same house. Yeah,
and to me, I think it was well worth it if you think that there was nefarious appointment, if you think the appointment was improper, if you think someone learned that someone's not doing their job or they're misappropriating funds, and you choose not to think anything of it. In fact, you raise their contract. If someone can make an argument, a showing of, hey, there's a basis here for us to make this argument, I do think that Judge McAfee, I don't think he was wrong for letting this disqualification hearing play out. And I think that he made I think he did pass the buck. I don't know what's going to happen with this appeal.
He split
The
it.
baby.
Yeah, he split the baby. I was like,
You're thinking of that man versus bear conversation that everyone's talking about.
yeah, he split the baby, and that's a terrible thing to say, splitting up a baby. But I honestly think that they did not prove without a shadow of a doubt, and isn't that what we're supposed to do? And a point that was made was,
and guys, the reason we're saying that is because for a disqualification hearing, that is not yes, it's the state versus the defendants for the whole overarching case, but for that segment, for that type of argument, it's the defense making the argument that the prosecution should be disqualified, and in that action, the defendants bear the burden of proof, right? So that's why you're hearing us talk about burden of proof being on the other side here. Overall, the whole overarching case, the prosecution bears the burden of proof to prove their case against all the RICO defendants.
But what's crazy is they act like this was a case, like she was on trial, and she was not on trial. And they made
I think she never should have taken the stand. We might have heard me say that. I think she should not have taken the stand. But if she thinks it's good for maybe the bigger picture, maybe that's better for a longer career or campaigning for re-election, because this is going to go on past the election cycle. Maybe there's a strategy there, but I think for the micro action of the disqualification hearing, don't get up there, because we got some testimony on some timelines and some extra uses of it's only going to be used against you.
May I ask you a question? What did you think about Terrence giving all of this information? What was your thought on that?
I have a lot. So I think he's messy. I think broken clock right twice a day type of situation, where maybe he was genuine when he said, I don't like the way Nathan Wade treats his wife. Maybe he actually did truly feel that way, but at the same time, I think he also had a bigger grievance that he could tack that onto, because his money was changing. He wasn't getting the same work anymore. Then the partnership, there was division. They fell apart.
Oh,
his pockets were hurt.
Because he had SA'd one of the clients and they had to pay her $20,000.
And they had to get him out. So I think he may have taken a grievance that could be valid and tack it onto what his priority grievance is, right? Manifest function, latent function. This is really what I'm mad about. But I'm going to have this other thing that's going to make me seem empathetic and relatable, and like I'm doing this all in pure good faith, because I just don't think it's right to see Joycelyn go through this, right? So I'm going to say these things, and maybe there's some smoke and fire under this stuff, right? But I'm telling you all this because this is really what I care about. This is the ego I want to satisfy. That's how I looked at Terrence Bradley.
He was jealous. He was jealous.
I don't think he was entirely unreliable, but once you're unreliable about one thing, what happens to the things that you could be informed on and truthful about if you were unreliable once?
And he was definitely trying to dodge being on stage.
Both times. Both times he had to get up there. Oh my gosh. I think he was a mess. That's my summary of Terrence.
Yeah.
I think he was a mess before the hearings even started.
He was, and it's going to be interesting to see what is this interview going to for him.
Oh my God, do you think they're going to ask? We're so far behind now, but it's still not near my threshold. We will have to keep going. It's taking like the first 10 minutes.
I'm quiet.
Let's do it.
But Nathan Wade does not feel that the case is in any way in jeopardy.
So you didn't realize
Then I got to pause. Did he just refer to himself in the third person?
Yes, he did.
Oh my God.
Your life was really going to be under a microscope.
I did not realize that my life would be in danger. The microscope, I don't have a problem with.
You're just like the rest of us on the outside looking in. I'm curious if you think that Donald Trump will be convicted.
I believe and stand behind every bit of the work that was done while I was the special prosecutor on the case. And I believe that, you know, there's going to be that day of reckoning where a Fulton County jury there in Fulton County, Georgia, would have to make that decision.
What do you think is the greatest misconception about you?
Issues surrounding my divorce. It's a difficult thing to watch and to hear. Watch and listen to your life play out before the American public inaccurately.
Ultimately, as we sit here today, do you feel you've done anything wrong?
Oh, wow. I don't feel as though I've done anything wrong. I feel like I have been, I guess, in my silence, I've been treated a bit unfairly, a bit harshly.
What's next for you?
Wow, the sky's the limit. I love the dynamics of the courtroom, but I'm also a people person. I enjoy people. And right now, I think it is just incumbent upon me to unplug, get away from all of it until I can clear my mind and make some rational decisions about next steps.
Our thanks to Nathan Wade for the conversation. Some defendants in the case have taken pleas.
So,
Others,
is that the end of
including
the
Donald
interview?
Trump, have entered pleas of
There's
not
gonna
guilty.
be an ad break, and
we
it
still
looks
have
like
much
they
more
go
to
to
get to.
something
Coming up,
else.
Kendrick Lamar and Drake throw spars using bars.
We could stay and watch that segment. I'm gonna let it play through the ad. I'm gonna mute it, and we can pull us up. But it looks like that was. I don't see them coming back to it. So
Yeah, it was
that
only like
the entirety.
Yeah, it was like a 15-20 minute interview. It wasn't very long.
Well, I
Yeah.
think it's very interesting that last part there. Why do you think he's doing this? What's the biggest misconception about you? My divorce case and everything surrounding that.
Yeah, I would like to know the truth if she was having an affair with his best friend. I think that would make any man, if that is the truth, that would make any man feel some kind of way. And word on the curb.
That affects how any distribution would play out. Right? In
Distribution of
Georgia, by Georgia law. So Georgia, there is, if you're the one that commits adultery, now that's a factor in what you're entitled to. It impacts what you're entitled to.
And that's what her attorney, Jocelyn attorney, was basically saying as well. So something had to transpire. It takes two to tango. It's not always one, unless you've been married and understand and know what, their relationship is, and we're not a fly on their wall either. So, but at the end of the day, the word on the curb was that she had an affair with his best friend. They stayed together for the sake of the kids. When,
that sounds like American Pie. That sounds like an American Pie divorce story. The typical staying together for the kids.
Yes. And that during this divorce, he agreed to whatever the stipulations were, because he thought he had that job with, the district attorney. So now that he doesn't want to pay some of the things he's asked for them. He's asked to have it reevaluated because he's not making the money that he was making before. And because he's no longer special prosecutor. So he's not getting that money. And that's going to be very interesting. It would be nice to hear the rest of what he had to say about what the truth is. Is it true? Did you have all these relationships with other assistant district attorneys?
He's smart not to say more in this interview. I just think it's smart for him not to. I get you want to say a little bit, right, for the PR side, and maybe he's trying to be rehireable if what he thought was going to be his income for. I mean, this Rico case we watched the YSL trial that's going on for like 3 years. This could be 2 years, 3 years of pay for him that is gone now. whether we want to fault him for how it got here is one thing, but him as an individual, he's got to still put food on the table for himself. So if he's doing this, he's probably got to walk a fine line between trying to rehabilitate his own image, become rehireable, without saying too much that's going to get him caught up in any current actions, the divorce action.
Okay, guys.
Exactly. And it's so, this is going to go on forever, right? This is not going away anytime soon. And as long as Fani is still, you know, as long as Fani is still the DA, this is going to, but understand there'll be another story real soon. Something else is going to go on. Guess what? They're battling it out with Kendrick Lamar and Drake. So that's the new hot story. It was Diddy.
And then that, like, Atlanta's like a hot point of the Drake and Kendrick beef too, right? Because it's, you know, Drake's going there. He keeps going to Atlanta because they're the only ones that don't seem to yet be calling him out. You know, the UK was like, you're stealing our whole grime wave. Get out of here. Let me go to Atlanta where they're still opening their doors to record with me.
Right.
So Atlanta's just coming up, keeps coming up.
And that's what I don't understand. It's like all these hot stories, Diddy, the Kardashians for that matter, Drake and Kendrick Lamar. And again, it's a distraction. It's all a distraction.
I want to remind people that, and I got to find the link again. I will drop the link again. Tamarra runs 2 different channels, and one of them she covers a lot of the Diddy news, like really fast too. Little details as they come up. She's live and she's covering them right away. So let me find where I dropped your YouTube channel to
I'll
your
do
podcast.
it for you. Okay,
yeah, that'd be great.
Yes.
I'm a struggle streamer. And thank you so much to Erica Dixon. You sent a $9.99 super chat saying, good night, ladies. Great convo. Do it again. We will. And Erica, you've been brave enough to come up here, and that would be great if on another day you would also love to come up and chat with us. Always love your opinion, whether it's in the chat or up here on the screen. So thank you so much and have a good night.
I'm so honored that you had me. Thank you so much. You know I love you, Kat. You're so amazing.
I love having you because I love disagreeing with people. You teach me so much. And you know, you might move my needle a little bit, you know. And when I say I disagree with you, that's just to emphasize that we do not agree 100% on every single thing. I'm not saying I don't agree with a lot of the things that you're saying.
Does it make me say I still love you? I still love you. And that's the thing. We can agree to disagree and still be friends. And I think if everybody had that same type of you know, response to each other and say, hey, well, this is what I believe and this is how I feel. I respect that. I respect that. Your name is Fani, F-A-N-I, not Fanny.
Oh, you got that so quick, Nathan.
No.
It came up on my screen like a split second before you already.
No.
It was autocorrect.
Yes.
Autocorrect, Nathan.
What it is. But, you know,
funny.
so I love you, Kat. You're amazing. Kendrick needs to learn how to disagree like you two. I don't know. He tearing Drake up. I can tell you that right now. It's a 4-1 right now.
I'm in pretty agreement. And I say that as somebody, look, I mean, I used to work in nightclubs. Like, obviously, they play a lot more. I've heard way more airtime of Drake music. Gets stuck in my head. I sing along with it. I do some Drake songs at karaoke, right? But
He does great music.
I gotta say, yeah, right? But Kendrick, yeah.
He demolished him. He got it. You know. So, Kat, whenever you need me, you know I'm here for you, girl. I love you.
It. Thanks so much, always.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye. And then, so there's that. We are changing this into a Kendrick Drake conversation. That could go on for a very long time. It's not entirely my lane either. I am not a hip-hop head, and I'm not from Toronto. Jill would have to be the expert there. So before this devolves into a Kendrick Drake beef stream, we're going to close this one up. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. If you want to look at more of the Kendrick Drake beef, Chillmonger has done great coverage. And you know what? That one's easy to find because I know your YouTube URL. You guys can go right over here. He actually plays the songs on his stream, so if you haven't heard them, now you can. And you'll get some expert Torontite commentary on it. Chillmonger has a great channel, so make sure you go over and check out Chillmonger as well. You guys all have a great night, and thank you so much again for Tamarra Allen for joining me. 2 different channels, guys. One on financial literacy, one on all things pop culture, entertainment, and some law. You get into some legal happenings over there too. And then thank you so much, Erica Dixon, for the $9.99 super chat, showing your love as always. Thanks so much, you guys. You guys all have a good one. Wait, hold on. You had it right, but I said like 10 different pronunciations. Torontonian? That must be the one. Toronto. You guys all have a good one.